are your source of the unauthorized. We're your unauthorized source of fantasy news and information. And I'm here with it's Jared. Gotta get that. That was terrible. And we don't have AJ Herschel with us. My name is Judah Buddha. AJ Herschel, the kid, had to go work on a paper. So here we are. How you doing today, Jared?
I'm doing good. I am let's see, this was a 4-day work week, and I've got a 3-day work week next week, and I'm going down to Panama City Beach on Thursday to visit our buddy Ford.
Nice.
So I'll be down there for a long weekend.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Are you gonna be live on the Surfing Violinist?
I better be. Ford's not just gonna stick me somewhere. I don't care if he allows it or not. I'm gonna crash it.
That's awesome. For any of you interested, check out the Surfing Violinist on YouTube for a weekly podcast and every now and then some interesting little videos.
Be the best show ever.
And let's see. So we've got some fantasy news to tackle today.
My gosh.
We've got some stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But let's try to orient as we talk about AB, as we talk about some of these things going on. Let's try to hone in our discussion on really understanding how this affects not just him, but how we approach fantasy in general. Maybe this talks to the process. Maybe this talks to maybe this goes towards our approach in fantasy football, because we talked. I mean, it's interesting. One of our first episodes, we talked about AB. We talked specifically. You talked about his crazy eyes, and I talked about how you can kind of glean things from watching how a player interacts with his teammates and so on and so forth in real life. You have to do more than stats in fantasy football.
You do. Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of the way it applies to fantasy is just your risk tolerance, or how smart it is to, draft risky players earlier. AB's kind of right on that line. His average draft position this year was kind of right on that line where I'm sort of willing to start taking a little bit more risk. But so I have 17 fantasy teams. I did not take him in any of the first 16. However, we'll see, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, one or the other. Wednesday night. I guess it was Wednesday. I had my last draft Wednesday, and so I had a sort of a late third round pick. Of course, all the top receivers, were off the board. Mike Evans was off the board and everything. So AB was the top ranked receiver left. Okay. I thought, haven't taken him in any drafts. I'll take him here. Okay. Also, coincidentally, in 2 leagues that day, I ended up working out trades that involved him. They weren't just for him. But one of them was, Julio. I traded Julio in exchange for, I didn't really have a good flex. I had 2 good running backs, but I didn't have a good flex. So I traded Julio for Leonard Fournette and AB. And I thought that's a pretty good deal, I think. If he keeps it together, because if you look at the athletics rankings, Julio's around 10 and Leonard Fournette and AB are both 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there. So, to trade one player that's fringe top 10 for 2 players that are fringe top 20, when you're needing a spot to be filled, when really your flex spot's kind of weak, I thought, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah. I did not expect all of this, however, because I thought okay, we're past the helmet issue, we're past the feet issue. I think he can maybe give me some good games, and then maybe I turn around and trade him or something. But now, I still didn't get killed in the trade. I mean, Fournette could potentially have, a good year. I mean, he was a first round pick a couple of years ago. So, you know, if he stays healthy, I could still end up, you know, winning the trade theoretically. But man, it's just insane. But for anyone who drafted, like I you know, intentionally avoided him, not just because of his off the field stuff, but because he had always been in Pittsburgh. You know, he's going to a weaker offense. That Derek Carr's a less accurate quarterback. So there were just a lot of reasons to not really take him. You know, I really was just kind of taking him as to get a share of him there towards the end of my drafts. And of course now I regret doing that.
The reason I was completely fading him was that I've had him a number of times in leagues, and every time Roethlisberger would go down, would be injured or something like that, AB's numbers would just tank.
Right.
And it's not that I'm a huge Christopher Harris enthusiast. I love Christopher Harris, and he has been banging the drum about how to ignore all this stuff. Go out and get him now that he's cheap. And I'm just like, no, because he talks about skill. His primary thing in fantasy football is if you follow the skill, you win. And I understand that AB he's probably the best wide receiver in the league right now, skill wise.
I would say top three probably.
Who would you put ahead of him?
I think DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones, skill wise, are they're at least there with him. I mean, I don't know. I would like to see what they would do. I mean, it's so hard, you know. I mean, offenses are so different. Quarterbacks, I would love to see them all, like, you know, in a controlled test. But I mean, obviously, you can't ever get that. But you know, Hopkins is a little bit taller. Of course, Julio's a little bit taller too. But you know, I mean, it's really hard to kind of pick between those three guys.
Well, but I think when it just comes down to running routes.
Yeah.
And just the skill of the game, knowing the game. But I don't know. I mean, I think that was primarily with Pittsburgh, his chemistry with the team, with the coach. And it's not even the word chemistry isn't right. It's like because obviously there was some chemistry problems, but there was a clicking between. There was something that worked, the simpatico that really helped him excel. It accelerated his skill,
right?
Set.
Yeah,
and so now that he's with, you know, so the video came out, right? The final thing was this like amazingly edited, really entertaining video.
Well, it wasn't even really the final thing.
No, you're right. You should
because Gruden kind of apparently laughed it off. We never got a direct quote from him, but sources said he was, you know, thought it was awesome. Thought it was awesome. And so, but then you know, AB found out that they were fining him again for calling his GM a cracker and threatening to punch him in the face. You know, so he found out last night, I guess, that they were going to be fining him for that. And that was I guess maybe the last thing or whatever that voided his $30 million guaranteed. And part of his whole thing in Pittsburgh was wanting guaranteed money. And so he took to Instagram, I guess this morning, to say that, you know, tell the Raiders to release him. And he emailed some reporter to tell him that he, you know, wouldn't play now for him. So, yes, the video was absolutely spectacular. It was a beautiful disaster. That it really, I don't know if I've ever seen anything that really kind of encompassed the term beautiful disaster as well as that did.
I loved it. I go back and watch it. Whoever edited it for him was they really knew what they were doing. As somebody who is a YouTube enthusiast,
I like
and
to think
edited
it was just him.
no
In my
way.
it wasn't, but in my mind, I just like to picture AB on his computer all day, just like drinking coffee and like just, frantically editing this video together.
Oh man. Well, I mean, both of us have done video editing.
Yeah.
It took more than a day to do this, right? I
Oh,
mean,
well,
he's been working on this video for a while.
well, I mean, production wise, yeah, I mean, it would have had to have been it would have probably, I'm sure, had to have been filmed, but I don't know. I mean, you get pros. I mean, there's not that much complicated to it, though. Like
No.
if you get a pro, it's all in grayscale, so you don't,
Oh,
it's
that's
not
right.
like you're wasting time on color correction. It's just set to classic music track. The stuff, it probably wasn't shot in a day, but I mean, it could have been, because it was just all like him kind of around the house. And really, like, I worked at a I sort of like did an internship at a post-production studio,
Mhm.
and like the really good editors can put stuff together fast. It could have been done in a day.
I guess so. If I mean, he's got tons of money. He probably just put a bunch of money towards it. Yeah, but hired the best guys. They did, because
Yeah.
I was looking at the footage. The footage is good.
Oh yeah.
I like whoever. I'd hire that person in a minute.
Yeah, the footage was very good. Somebody said, it reminded him of like a Nike ad, and it really was like a alternate Bizarro universe Nike ad.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, what was I going to say? The real thing would be like knowing when the phone call with Gruden happened, because that was the thing, because we don't know if that was like from the thing originally where he like went MIA from the team over his feet, or if it was more recently about the thing with Mayock or whatever. So that would kind of dictate. I mean, if it came from, like Wednesday or Thursday night or something, then, then obviously the video would have had to have been turned around. But it was just kind of funny where the irony of Gruden saying like, can we just stop all this and just play football? And then Antonio takes that quote from a secretly recorded conversation, or I assume it was probably secretly recorded, and then puts it into his video. So just the irony of him taking that statement of saying, can we play football? And he turns that into like a Bizarro
non-football.
a Bizarro like Nike ad, type Nike style ad for commercial for himself. It was just too funny.
And like I said, I think I told you in the messages, like, I say what you will about Antonio Brown, but he is making this so interesting.
He is. But I mean, at this point though, if he doesn't, like I kind of just expect him to go play in the XFL now, because, if his whole thing, there's two things that he wants. Or what he said, one of them was spoken, one of them was unspoken, but he wanted guaranteed money, which is part of the reason that he, left the Steelers. Yeah. Although they were just tired of him too. But he wanted guaranteed money, and the Raiders were, one of the few teams willing to give it to him. Now, who is going to give him guaranteed money? Like, someone would sign him for sure. Like a ton of teams would be willing to, or well, at least some would be willing to sign him on a performance-based contract that they could get out of if and when, and really it's more of a when, he would start to melt down. But who's going to give him guaranteed money now? I don't think there's not a lot of certainty in the NFL, but I think after everything that's happened just in the past 2 days, like the timeline of everything that's happened just in the past 2 days is like so detailed, it's where you got to like follow all these little, so I don't think anybody would give him guaranteed money. And the other thing is, he, in going to Oakland, he was the unquestioned star. The quarterback was not going to be a bigger star than him. There wasn't another receiver who was going to be a bigger star with him. And that was part of the thing that kind of initiated this. There was I can't remember who it was, but someone, one of the bigger analysts pointed out that part of this all kind of started because Juju Smith-Schuster was voted team MVP for last season. And so he was not having that, and so he like freaked out on, was complaining about Juju and how Juju had that fumble in the New Orleans game that cost him the game and ended up, kind of costing them ultimately a playoff spot. And so that was part of the thing was, suddenly, he wasn't the only star receiver in there. And, maybe he was still better overall, but they voted him team MVP because, Juju had the character and stuff too. So really, like, if the Raiders situation wasn't going to work, where he's the unquestioned star and he's getting all this money, what is going to work?
Yeah, that's what I said. I responded to somebody who said, because Christopher Harris says, like, oh, this is probably better for him. He's, the faster he gets put on another team, the better for fantasy. And my response is, okay, first of all, it's going to take some time for the transition.
Yeah.
Second of all, he's not going to be the first banana no matter where he goes. I'm trying to think. So Christopher Harris' contention is that he's going to go to somewhere like Seattle. Seattle could really use him, but still like, he eventually will probably be the wide receiver one, but he's still gonna, they're not just gonna be like, hey, Lockett, yeah, you could sit the bench while yeah, come on.
Yeah, I mean, receiver is like the hardest position to transition to.
Learn the playbook
for another offense. Yeah. And if he went somewhere like Seattle, man, I don't know. I guess to a certain extent, like the way they play, it's a run heavy offense. Of course, part of that is dictated by the fact that they just don't have, that many people to throw to, but still they've always been, even with Doug Baldwin there, and, Doug Baldwin wasn't, a scrub. They've always been a run heavy offense. And so, how long is that really going to last? Because Pete Carroll is a loosey-goosey coach.
Yeah.
They can't just, I don't really know what culture other than, there's been all the jokes about him going to the Patriots because like every, sort of troubled star seems to wind up there, and then they kind of reform them somehow. But I don't think that would ever work for him because that's not what he wants,
Well, not only that, but it goes to what you're saying about his guaranteed 30 million. Belichick's not going to give him guaranteed 30 million. You're
Absolutely
talking about the guy who trades or drops people for not making it to practice because of a snowstorm. You think that this guy is going to make it on that roster? Come on,
right.
Not gonna happen.
It's very limited. I mean, you think about it, like Buffalo tried to trade for him last year before the Raiders, and he said no to that. He's not going to work in Buffalo. He's not going to work in Buffalo because, even now, if they would do it, he doesn't want to go to Buffalo, New York.
And they're not going to give him 30.
They're not going to give him 30 million, guaranteed. But and then plus with that situation, like, I'm sure some team might be willing to do it, even though it'd be a terrible idea. But really, you don't want him with any young quarterback. Like, if you've got a developing young quarterback, like that's why the Panthers got rid of Steve Smith.
Raiders just released him.
Ooh, okay.
Raiders just released him.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I don't think anything's going to happen quickly with that. I don't think he's going to like get signed today.
But for fantasy, don't put him in your starting lineup for Monday.
Don't put him in your starting lineup for Monday. Right.
And it's interesting too with all this. At least he's been released now, so that people don't have to make that decision. Because having a Monday game, you know, if there's a chance that AB. So I wish AJ Herschel was here because last year I infamously sat AB for Shepard because AB like was questionable and he was playing on a Monday and I didn't
Yeah,
know.
that's tough.
I
That's
didn't
tough.
know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, sometimes if you have like the only, if you've got like, if you have a chance to pick up like the team's third receiver, like if you've got their number one receiver and he's going to be out, like maybe you do that if he doesn't, but it really that is always a tough spot. Like, if it's a Monday game, sometimes even, or a Sunday night game.
Sunday night. Yeah. Same thing.
Sunday night's the same thing, where you don't know and you have to make a call. Of course,
Yeah.
now the other thing though is we don't know for sure that this is over. I would say that there's like maybe like a 5% chance that the Raiders will now re-sign him with just to like 3 million guaranteed or something like that. I mean, honestly, like I know it sounds ridiculous, but after everything that's happened, like again, when you call your GM a cracker, punt the ball away, tell him to fine him for that, and you threaten to punch him in the mouth, and they're like, oh, that crazy AB, what's he going to do next? Well, we didn't like that, but come on back for the game Monday night. I mean, when that's been their attitude already, when his video goes up and John Gruden's like, oh, I thought that was awesome. That was the greatest thing. He's so great. He's misunderstood. Come on back and play for us. I don't think you can like 100% rule it out. I don't think it'll happen, but I don't think you can 100% rule it out.
No, but he's gonna go around and see what. So for a second, for a intellectual exercise, who has the cap room first of all, and who is crazy enough to sign him and give him something guaranteed? I mean, actually, the more I think about it, the Bills have the most cap room.
I think the Colts and he is absolutely not being signed by the Colts.
No, the Colts have all that. What did they give that dead money or something to?
That they have the most cap room. That was prior to. That was like they've signed Brian Hoyer and they've given Jacoby Brissett an extension, and I'm not sure how Andrew Luck's cap number works this season. But prior to the season, the Colts had like by far the most cap room. So I'm not sure where that stands now. He's not going to the Colts. So I would say like, okay, possibilities. The Dolphins love to make bad decisions. They seem to be in tank mode. So
the Dolphins, but if they're in tank mode, why would they?
I know, and I'm not saying I'm just throwing these.
Okay.
I'm just going to run through. Some possibilities here because there's most of them I can immediately just like cross off the list, But the Dolphins, they seem to be in tank mode. However, they like to make irrational, bad decisions. So they're a possibility. I think they're the only team. I mean, I guess Buffalo, if we want to throw Buffalo back in there, since they did try to get him originally, but I would hope they would have more sense than. I mean, they've got Josh Allen, who's their second year starter, young quarterback. Don't do that to Josh Allen, please. Don't do that to Josh Allen. Okay, so I don't think anybody in his old division, the AFC North, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think anybody in the South, besides the Colts, nobody's going to do it. Although it was kind of funny. Somebody was pointing out that the only team that he had still followed on Instagram, like after he got mad at the Raiders, and unfollowed them and Derek Carr, the only team he was still following on Instagram was the Houston Texans. So maybe he wanted to go play with Deshaun Watson. Can you imagine that offense with DeAndre Hopkins and AB?
Do they have the cap? They might have the cap.
They might have the cap room because
what if they release Lamar what's his name?
Lamar Miller. Well, they may not have even needed to do that because they talked about how I think they could have done a deal for Melvin Gordon or something. I don't know, but I can't see them doing that.
I can see them doing it.
They don't have
I
one.
can see them doing it.
They don't have anything left to trade. Well, okay, never mind. They don't
They don't have to trade. He's
they don't have to
released.
trade. But they have DeAndre Hopkins. They have Will Fuller. They just traded for Kenny Stills. They've got Kiki Cutie. I mean, these are younger guys, but I mean, Will Fuller is a good number 2. I mean, that would just be there's no reason. Like another receiver is honestly not going to help them. So I don't think he goes to Texans. But it was just funny that was the one he was still following. Okay, so AFC West.
Yes.
The Raiders just released him. I can't imagine John Elway and the Broncos. I mean, like their receivers aren't great, but I can't imagine them.
The Broncos.
I mean, maybe the Chiefs wouldn't do it. The Chiefs don't need that headache. And the Chargers don't need him. The Chargers got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So I will say from the AFC, I can't see the Broncos doing that though. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's anybody realistically in the AFC. And then we've got the Patriots, Patriots, would the Patriots take him? I still think the Patriots would probably be the most willing to do it because they've got the culture. They've got, a strong leader. They've got, a strong leader in Brady, a strong leader in Belichick. They've already got Josh Gordon though. They've already
that's what I mean. If you're going for the arbitrage play here, if you're Belichick, you're going for Gordon is so cheap, and so like why would you already come on.
Yeah, so I don't see any of the AFC teams realistically doing it. I'll say that the two that
what about Philadelphia?
I don't think Philadelphia would do it. They've got Alshon Jeffrey. Anybody. Antonio Brown's going to be better than anybody other than like 2 or 3 receivers in the league. But is it really just going to be worth it? I think there's another NFC East team. I could see Washington doing it.
Yeah,
I could see Washington doing it.
Yeah.
I could also see, like you said, Seattle. Washington. Seattle needs a receiver. I could see maybe Seattle trying to take a chance on that. Other than that, like I'm just running through the list of teams in my mind. I just don't. There's just no one else that I can think of. I can't imagine the Cowboys. The Cowboys will take a chance on people. I can't imagine that they want that headache.
No, they've got a great core already.
Yeah. So I would say if I was betting like top 3 landing spots, I would say Washington, Seattle. I don't know who the third one would be. Because I don't think he wouldn't go to Buffalo.
I think my number 1 place. I think it's
Houston,
Denver. I think Denver.
Yeah,
because what's his name? Who's the manager? The Elway is just crazy enough. Like he replaying Oakland, right? Mm-hmm. Like game, I think week 3.
Yeah, I mean they've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a veteran defense. Yeah. I'll put Denver in as like a long shot.
Number third. 1.
They're my dark horse. They're my
Who's your number 1? Who's your number 1?
I'm gonna say potentially. I'll say Seattle because they need it, and Pete Carroll might be willing to do something like that. I don't know though. Yeah. But honestly, like my number 1 is the XFL. Like honestly, because I mean, but think about it though. They would be willing to give him guaranteed money to come be the face of that league. Do you hear a dog howling in the background?
A little bit. Not bad.
Okay. It's like outside, but
if you hadn't said that, I probably wouldn't have known.
It's outside. It's the neighbors. I would say the XFL is the most likely scenario. Maybe he gets signed by another NFL team short term, but how is that? I mean, he's not gonna stay calm. Like he's clearly like bipolar, manic, or suffering from CTE or something. So I'm gonna say, think about the XFL. Someone would be willing to give him guaranteed money there to come be not just the face of a team, but the face of a league. And he wouldn't just be the star of a team, he would be the star of the league. So that's my prediction.
So you're saying XFL second place is Seattle. I'm saying Denver second place. I think I actually think for some reason I got it stuck in my head now. I think Philadelphia picks him up. Now, the next question is, what does this mean fantasy wise for who's left? Waller, Jaron Brown. Is it no? What's his name? No, it's
the running back or the receiver. So
receivers.
Okay, so it's Tyrell Williams was the number 2. He came
Tyrell
over.
Williams, but he's
over
probably
from San Diego.
Picked up by this point. I'm looking through all my.
Well, what happened was yesterday, like people picked him up and then dropped him.
This is true.
And so he may be out there. Let me look real quick. Let me look and see how many leagues he's available in mine, just out of curiosity. But yeah, go ahead.
While you're doing that, because I just went through and I checked all my leagues to see who was on the waiver wire, and I found a lot of Waller. And I'm stuck with the choice. Do I pick up Waller? Now, Waller is somebody who's been in the league for a while now, but everybody's talking him up. He's been talked up in camp and stuff like that as just an outstanding tight end, receiving wise and run blocking.
See, I didn't really know anything about him. I thought he was a rookie, but
maybe is he a rookie? I don't think so.
I'm looking at it real quick. No, you're right. He's been around for a few years. He was with the Ravens, and then he was in Oakland last year. I literally have never heard his name before this year.
I haven't either. There's also Hunter Renfrow, and the guy he was like fourth string, but actually had a lot of he's speed and touchdowns with the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm not sure. Like their number 1 guy now will be Tyrell Williams, who was with the Chargers. And he had a pretty good year. The year that Keenan Allen went down. So he had in 2016 he had 119 targets, 69 receptions, 1,059 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's pretty solid. But otherwise, he's just been like the number 2 guy to Keenan Allen, and then they got Mike Williams. So
I'm talking about JJ Nelson.
Oh,
JJ Nelson. You remember him on the Arizona wide receiver core? He's sort of like when John Brown and fake John Brown, Jared Brown went down. JJ Nelson stepped up as a speedster, long threat, really extended the field type guy.
I don't see him doing anything. I mean, I think he's still like the number 3 guy there. Hunter Renfrow is getting talked up as like the number 2 receiver. I don't really know, much about him, but I think Nelson's like the 3rd guy, maybe even the 4th guy, considering that the Raiders like to throw to the tight end.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, on their depth chart, he's 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I just know the Raiders haven't really been a fantasy situation that I've
rushed out to get pizza,
right, or like monitored closely of like, oh, who's if AB's goes down, who's going to be behind them? Does it really matter? Because I mean, like I was even worried about what AB himself would do. Like the only one that I've really gotten a lot of shares of from the Raiders is Josh Jacobs, the running back, because I think he's going to be a 3 down.
So that's my next question. Mm-hmm. What does this do for Josh Jacobs? Because part of me thinks, okay, yeah, he's going to get a lot more. He's going to get a lot more checkdowns. He's going to get a lot more carries. But then another part of me thinks this team's hot garbage. Mm-hmm. I don't want a rookie running back from a team that's hot garbage.
Yeah. I think he'll be solid. If you look at what Marshawn Lynch was doing last year, I mean, Marshawn Lynch, who didn't have a lot left in the tank, he was putting up some solid numbers before he went down last year. So I think the Raiders are better than they were last year, slightly.
I don't see how. What makes them better?
Well, I mean, for one, I mean, it's year two of Gruden and kind of more of his personnel. Last year, let's see, who did they have at wide receiver? They had Jordy Nelson, who was on his last legs, and can't even remember who was opposite of him. But Tyrell Williams is a little bit more respectable, slightly.
They had Cooper
only for part of the year.
Only for most of the year. For like
half of it or
so. A little over half, yeah.
But I mean, they didn't know how to use him in that. Like he would have, games where he would have like one catch or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really affects Josh Jacobs that much. I mean, I think he's a better version of what Lynch was last year, and Lynch was a decent RB2. I mean, Jacobs is good.
He's good, but he's no beast mode. He's not even 80% of beast mode. This guy's a rookie, man.
But not in with running backs. It's generally all about youth, though. I mean, Marshawn was in his 30s. Trying to carry that team at like 32 or 33. Running backs. I mean, he's like a young version of beast mode. I mean, Josh Jacobs can pop people. So,
I saw some tape of Josh Jacobs. He's all right. He didn't impress me.
Yeah.
He just did not impress me. He looks like somebody who gets by a lot on his strength and size. Yeah. He doesn't have that great a vision. He's not that fast. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think he'll be solid. I think the volume's going to be there. Yeah. I drafted a lot of stock in him and very little in David Montgomery, who was another preseason popular pick, and it was all based on volume. Like I knew Jacobs was going to be the uncontested starter in Oakland. They used a first-round pick on him. There was just nobody else, and Montgomery in that Bears offense with Mike Davis and Tariq Cohen. And I thought Montgomery was going to get more than what he did. But I mean, man, the Bears offense was a train wreck, not just the running backs. I mean, it was mainly Mitch Trubisky, but he wasn't getting the touches, So again, I think you just got to go, you kind of got to go with volume and schedule, So.
Well, yeah. Well, so let's transition then. We've talked enough about Oakland.
Until 10 minutes from now, we're going to get some other tweet of what AB's done. But yeah, we better get away from it while we can.
Real quick. Who would you be most surprised that they picked him up?
Oh gosh, there would be most surprised would be the Colts. Because they could have traded for him. They could have signed Le'Veon Bell. They had plenty of cap room for Le'Veon Bell. They are not that kind of team. That is not their culture. They specifically do not want those guys.
Yeah.
So I would bet my immortal soul that the Indianapolis Colts will not sign Antonio Brown.
That's huge. Okay.
I feel that's safe and secure about it.
Okay. Well, we'll see. So moving on, Bears.
What about you? Do you have anybody that you would be most?
I was, the first team that comes to my mind is Kansas. Like if Kansas picked them up, that would be exciting and surprising at the same time.
Part of me could kind of see them. I mean, look at everything they like. Tyreek Hill, they like, man, we don't care. I mean, they got rid of Kareem Hunt because
they don't see again. It's like the Josh Gordon thing. Like they already have a really talented nut as a wide receiver,
Yeah, but
problem as a wide receiver.
true. I mean, and you've only got one football. Patrick Mahomes can't actually, Patrick Mahomes probably could throw
If anybody could,
two passes at one time if they start letting teams use two footballs.
he really could. Yeah,
he probably could, and one of them would be a no look, and then the other one
would be no look.
Both of them would be right. But I mean, they got Tyreek Hill, they got Travis Kelce, they got all those running backs, Sammy Watkins. Like, we forget that they have Sammy. Like, if he's healthy, he can, be solid. So
that's why it would be. It would blow my mind if they picked him up, but I'd be excited to see how it worked out. All right, so moving on to the Bears and Packers game. So we're in football.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, we are in football season as we speak. We got to see some real life football. So a lot of the talk I heard afterwards was about how bad this game was, and I didn't really find it to be that bad. But then again, I like sometimes I like watching the system. Like the defense and the play calling and how teams react to new things. Now, a lot of people were saying, I heard this a lot. This is because they didn't participate in preseason. This was basically a preseason game. And that was interesting to me. I hadn't even thought of that. I was like, oh, well, I guess, none of these players really participated in preseason, and this was them knocking off the rust. I also think this was the Bears being surprised at how good the Packers defense was. I think that defense is going to be a sleeper fantasy defense going forward.
I didn't really hear that much about the game being that bad. A little bit, but mostly what I heard and what I agreed with was about Mitch Trubisky being that bad.
Yes. Well, yeah.
And that's part of the reason why the Packers defense is for sure improved. They're better. And hopefully they stay that way, and hopefully they don't have injuries, because part of the problem with the Packers has always been injuries. Like, I swear they have more players that get injured than any other team in the NFL, especially on defense. They lose defensive players. But it's hard for me to gauge exactly how good they are, because Mitch Trubisky was just so bad. I mean, it's like Tramon Williams said, like, they wanted him to play quarterback. That is like the ultimate indictment of someone, is like, we wanted him to do his job. We wanted to like box him in where he had to do his job.
Yeah.
And I will never understand why Mitch Trubisky was drafted with the number 2 pick, like 10 plus picks higher than Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes, I guess there wasn't, he was sort of a late riser, lesser known commodity, but for a long time, like, people thought Deshaun Watson would be, if not a number 1 pick, like the first quarterback off the board and a top 3 pick. Mitch Trubisky started like 12 games for North Carolina, wasn't particularly accurate, in the same conference as Deshaun Watson, who had this huge resume, who beat Alabama, who passed for like a record number of yards against Alabama's defense for a national title. How do you take him over him? So,
well, it was, I feel like it was almost a weak moment in whatever human made the final decision. It was like an excitement thing. It's like, this is going to be great, and it's just one of those things. I've been there where you're just like, this is just so crazy. It just might work, because it was, I remember when I was watching the draft and thinking, what are they doing?
Yeah.
No, they didn't have to do it. They didn't.
No, they didn't even have to trade up. They traded up with San Francisco. Yeah, they were at the 3 pick. San Francisco was at 2. And so not only did they take him that high, not only did they take him above those other guys, but they traded to go against him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, and Colin Cowherd said this the other day too. And it's not me like piggybacking off of his stuff, because I was texting with people and posting stuff to social media afterwards, but like, the Bears have to, and I think the Bears probably know this, like they've got to move on from Mitch Trubisky. It's just like, he's in year 3 and he as Coward put it, I didn't say this, but like Coward actually kind of summed it up better. Like he looked like a guy making his first NFL start, you know. He was just so bad. And I think this is his ceiling. I think this is basically his ceiling. And so you've got this great team, the best defense in the NFL. You've got good receivers. You've got Allen Robinson is a true number one receiver. You've got Anthony Miller, who's a young receiver that they like. You've got Taylor Gabriel, who was with the Falcons, who's a good like burner. He's not like a good overall receiver, but he, if you get him the ball in some space, he can do stuff.
He's in the Antonio Brown phylum of receivers. He's a small, fast, good route runner.
Yeah. You've got Trey Burton, who was a good tight end in Philadelphia. He would at least be solid. And those running backs, you just don't have a quarterback that can.
Well, but here's the thing: week one, I tell myself every year, don't overreact to week one, and I think I've never been a Trubisky hater, even as a Packers fan. I think that he has some qualities. Not as a smart, not as like an intelligent, field reader, but as a physical, I don't know, get the job done type, Rex Grossman type quarterback. I think I think he's got more skill than that. I don't think that was indicative of who he is as a quarterback. I know he did look like a rookie quarterback, but I mean, primarily because he hadn't done any like preseason, any kind of, it almost looked like he hadn't practiced.
I just don't agree. Even last year, I said, like, I think it was only his second year. And so you can't give up on someone in year two. I mean, really, in a lot of ways, it would be really hard for them to give up on him in year three. It's probably going to come after the season, but I like just nothing about his development shows me that he's really like improving on any kind of meaningful level. But like the stuff that he's doing, he is very athletic. Like he can move around, and you see Matt Nagy like trying to do all these things with him. But when it just comes to making reads and making throws, when he threw that interception in the end zone, he just stared the guy down. He never took his eyes off of that receiver. And so, the Packers, I can't remember if it was Williams or who intercepted that, but they just followed him, and the guy.
It was the
ex-Bear.
Yeah.
And that was what somebody was saying. That's a good point. And that's what somebody was saying was, this is a guy who has seen Trubisky in practice, and he has seen him stare down receivers, and he knew that ball was going there. And but he was just missing badly on a lot of throws too. I mean, he's got like one read. He's got like one read, and it's Allen Robinson. And if Allen Robinson isn't open, he's done.
So what does it mean for fantasy? I think, Evan Silva said, go out and get as much Allen Robinson as you can at this point, because he has a love affair with Allen Robinson. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look at anyone else. Mm-mm. And Allen Robinson is the target monster. He's in every team he's ever been in. Well, I guess he's only also been with Jacksonville, but he's always been a target monster. Mm-hmm. He's like Des Bryant, with a little bit more, I don't know, a little more speed.
He's a terrible quarterback whisperer. He's the guy that terrible quarterbacks just like to zero in on, because Blake Bortles would give him like 160 targets. And then now it's Mitch Trubisky doing the same thing.
So that's so Christopher Harris said, in the tape, his comp for Trubisky was Bortles. He said he looks a lot like Bortles. He's like, if he can't go with his first read, he wants to run. Yep. He wants to scramble. And and there he is with, and Allen Robinson you remember last year you were a huge Allen Robinson fan, and this year I've actually taken him quite a bit because of what you said last year. I didn't like him, but this year I have him I have a lot of shares of him because I just know
he came on strong last year, like you said.
Well, yeah, at the end of the end, you
Mhm.
could get him for so cheap. I think I
Yeah.
got him in sixth, seventh round
Mhm.
this year. A lot of
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And you pointed out like towards the end of the year, like he like kind of like started clicking with Trubisky.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of the opposite for me, like because I knew Allen Robinson was good. And I thought mistakenly, I'm like, Mitch Trubisky can't be worse than Blake Bortles. He's got to be at least somewhat better. So Allen Robinson's numbers, even if they stay roughly the same, even if they only go up, by 5 receptions and 100 yards and 1 touchdown, he's going to have slightly better numbers. But somehow Mitch Trubisky was worse, really, than Blake Bortles. So,
So,
um,
well, what does this mean fantasy wise for David Montgomery?
uh, for Montgomery, like I would still take him if I could get him cheap, like
And
because
you can, especially now.
I think,
Well, okay, so drafts are over. We're talking about
yeah.
trade
Well,
wise.
you can still draft, like they'll still let you can still do drafts like through the first like
Yeah,
month
but
of the
I don't know
season.
if anybody's
Most people wouldn't, right? Most people wouldn't. So yeah, so I think trade wise, if you're in a league with savvy players, they're not going to let go of him right away. Most of them are gonna be like, okay, I don't want to sell low on him, so they'll ride it out for another week or two.
Okay, here's a quick question because we got a question in the chat about Antonio Brown. Go back to the beginning of the video. If you just hit the little red scroll button, we talked a ton about it. But what if you traded? What if you leveraged the situation with Antonio Brown and traded for Montgomery? Maybe trade. Would you do this trade if I have Ingram? No, who is it?
Mark Ingram?
No. The wide receiver is taking over. It's not Ingram. It's
Tyrell Williams.
Tyrell Williams. If I have Tyrell Williams, would you take Tyrell Williams for Montgomery? Because I would do that. I would give you Tyrell Williams for Montgomery.
I wouldn't. I would trade Tyrell Williams for him. I wouldn't take him.
You wouldn't
for
take
Montgomery. Him? No.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Would you take like Tyrell Williams and say I want to get rid of Geis and Tyrell Williams?
I would take Geis straight up for Montgomery.
Really?
Yeah. I like, because I mean Geis is supposed to be the 3-down back in Washington, and again, just going back to volume, if you're getting Adrian Peterson put up pretty good numbers last year,
and there's talks he's on the bubble to get dropped.
He'll go somewhere else because he doesn't want to sit behind a young running back. That was why, he was in New Orleans, and then New Orleans dropped him.
Came down.
Kamara came up. Yeah. So he doesn't want to sit behind her, but I don't know where he's going to go, but that's another, another topic. But yeah, I would take at this point, based on the volume that I saw from Montgomery, I would be, if I had him and someone would give me Geis straight up for him, I would deal him.
You do that. Now, what do you think of this? Do you think you could get Montgomery? I mean, he had 5 points, right? In standard league. A little bit like 6 or 7 in
half point PPR.
Yeah,
it was like 5 points.
Okay. I bet you somebody's out there that will take, if you want to get rid of Antonio Brown right now, and I think the Rotohackers were unanimous, get rid of crazy man Antonio Brown.
Within reason, if you can get.
Well, would you get rid of him for Montgomery?
No,
you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't, because I don't know that the volume is going to come soon enough with Montgomery, and with Brown, he could sign on with somebody else, and
you paid such a high draft
and I paid
capital.
Yeah, I've offered him for. I offered AB straight up for Josh Gordon. So I've put some deals out there like that, but I wouldn't do him with Montgomery right now because I think the volume will eventually get there this season, but
the volume might be 0 for AB.
It might, but if you're going to trade him, I think you can find other options other than Montgomery. I think you could find somebody willing to give you a more something that's going to return value better than Montgomery, because it just doesn't look like for a while that's going to happen. So I would keep him and just try to give him away, or try to get a lesser receiver. Like I might do it for, again, I like D.D. Westbrook. I might be willing to trade him straight up for D.
Okay. See, I'm a huge D.D. Westbrook owner. I guess it's hard for me because I have avoided Antonio Brown like the plague. And so if somebody offered me Antonio Brown for my DD, I'd be like, yeah, go fishing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
It depends. I mean, like somebody offered me, like back when this all first happened, when it sounded like AB was going to get suspended, but they hadn't said anything for sure. Back when it first happened, somebody offered me Curtis Samuel. But I didn't take it though, because, and I ended up getting Stephon Diggs for him instead yesterday, because somebody was, as soon as AB apologized, somebody was
like, oh, he's gonna play Monday now.
Yeah, they were like,
everything's okay.
Yeah,
he's not gonna make a crazy video.
Exactly. Right. And so I had put that trade out there. And somebody was probably like, oh, this sucker, I got to this news before he could cancel this trade. But I'm like, no, I'm give me Stephon Diggs. I'll take 90 or 95 cents on the dollar for him. Yeah. But I still now have him in another league. So
well, back to Montgomery. Would you trade Montgomery? Do I have Montgomery in our league? Would you trade Montgomery for someone like D.D. Westbrook?
It would depend. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I would be inclined.
I will take Montgomery from you. Well, I have D.D. So, but yeah. I would trade someone like D.D. for Montgomery.
I probably would, because you're just kind of looking at the upside versus, like, it would depend on what else I have. Like normally where I have DD, he's my third or maybe even my fourth wide receiver.
So that's a yes. That's a yes.
So yeah. Probably so. Yeah. Because the upside.
My thinking is this: don't be like whatever, arbitrage, whatever everybody's thinking about Montgomery right now, which is he's trash. He's going to give me 5 points the rest of the season. That's the value that's been established. 5 points is going to be in everybody's head.
Right.
Go out and trade a 10-point a game guy like John Brown, right? Somebody can take maybe or Dede. I feel like I love Dede, but he's not going to be a constant like 15 points, fantasy points a game type of guy. Whereas I do believe that Dave Montgomery could be that sort of player by the second half of the season.
Yeah. You have to go for upside to a certain, like there's a point where it's just like with like risk versus upside in the draft. It's kind of the same thing with, players. Once you've got them, like at some point down your roster, you've got to trade. You got to be willing to trade a guy who may be doing better right now, or is the safer bet for the guy with more upside, or vice versa, Yeah. So like with me, with like Antonio Brown, like I'm just gonna hang on to him if no one will give me like if anybody would give me for sure, like if anybody would give me a Lockett or a Godwin or
Godwin, you could probably get Godwin.
I've tried. I tried in that league where I've got him and they wouldn't bite, but I would take any of those in a heartbeat, but at some point, like it doesn't pay for me to trade him for. I don't think it pays for me to trade him for Curtis Samuel, because you've got Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore both in that Panthers offense. You don't know who's gonna get more of the volume. You don't.
I'll tell you right now, it's gonna be Curtis Samuel. End of the topic.
Cam, but the other thing too is like Cam's not the most accurate quarterback. So So for those reasons, like I can't go that low. At that point, it just makes more sense to just hang on to AB and see what happens. You know?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, moving on to the Packers side of things, because they didn't have a good fantasy day either. Their defense did.
Right.
Their defense did. But so would this be an opportunity to go out and try to get I even though I love him, Aaron Rodgers has always been terrible for fantasy for me, so I'm not trying to get him. But he might be somebody you want to go out if you've wanted to get Aaron Rodgers. If you missed him in the draft, now's the time to go get him, because that person is licking their wounds from only having about 15 points, from their awesome, third round pick.
Probably not third,
or fifth, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, he's more down around, I'd say, like fifth or sixth.
He was third off the board though, and I saw a lot of people taking. Well, that's true. They took the first two fast. They took
Mahomes and Watson
fast.
They went fast, yeah. And then there was like a little gap, and then maybe around like the fifth or sixth round, they started to take Aaron. Yeah.
Okay, so what about Aaron Jones? You're a big Aaron Jones owner.
Well, I'm not. I've got him in 2 leagues. But one of them's like a high dollar.
Me. No, that's not.
No, not in that league. No. So I've got him in 2 leagues. The thing with his schedule, like I knew this was going to be a bad game for him, and the mistake I made was not in the 2 leagues where I had him, not like drafting another option that I could like fill in for him this week, because the Bears are just, the toughest defense. They were at home. The Packers were, playing them there in Soldier Field. So I knew this was not going to be a good game for him. I like Aaron Jones overall this season, and I was encouraged by some stuff because he got, more volume. It was basically, more than 2-to-1 volume to Williams. He got like 13 touches. Williams got 5. Williams then had a couple of targets and Jones only had 1, but really it was 2-to-1, more than 2-to-1 volume. The tough thing with Aaron Jones is that, he started out the season with this game, and then his fantasy playoffs are his week 1 of the fantasy playoffs are week 15.
They've got a brutal schedule. He's got
the Bears again in week 15. Overall, his schedule is really not that bad. I was having this conversation with somebody on Twitter. Like, overall, it's not terrible, but it starts bad and it ends bad. And so I think Aaron Jones is a guy, I didn't take much of him. I think he's a guy that I would be willing to see if I could get low, maybe either this week, because they still play the Vikings this week. He had a good game against the Vikings last year, but the Vikings, typically have a pretty decent run defense. So we'll see what happens with that.
I mean, look, Packers. So they play the Bears, the Vikings, Broncos, Eagles. I mean, we're talking about like stout run defenses.
Yeah,
Cowboys, Lions again. Or Lions. Lions are bad. No, Lions are easy actually. Raiders easy. Chiefs,
I don't think the Chiefs are right.
Chargers,
yeah.
Panthers,
yeah.
49ers, I'm not loving it. Actually, Giants, they have a tough run defense, or they did last year. Who knows what this year? And then Redskins, no problem. But then Bears again, like you said, Vikings. And it's just that schedule. When I saw it at the beginning of the year, I thought, no Aaron Jones for me.
Yeah. I only have 2 shares of him in 17 leagues, so I don't have a lot of investment in him, but I typically try to take a share or 2 of most of the top guys, just so if I'm wrong, I can have some of them. But I don't know. I think it might not be a terrible idea if you've got shares of Aaron Jones to wait till he has a good game or 2 and then try to trade him. I definitely would prior to the fantasy playoffs, because again, he's got Chicago again in week 15.
They're going to be out for blood too.
Yeah.
All right. Now the last person I think we should talk about is Devontae Adams. Mm-hmm. So he was triple teamed most of the game. Mm-hmm. Triple covered. Triple team. It's not basketball, but he was triple covered most of the game. He was bracketed for most of the game. I would be happy right now if I was a Scantling. What's his name?
Marcus Valdez Scantling.
MVS.
MVS, yeah.
Because he's going to be peppered.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like he's back in sync with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the guy to have. Eventually they're going to work things out. They're not going to play such hard defenses. They've got a lot of. They're actually, those names that I mentioned have a lot of easy secondaries and hard run defenses. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on Devontae at this point?
I still like Devontae. I only have one share of Devontae, and that's out of 17 leagues, and that's in our league. So you're fortunate. Yeah, you're fortunate this week since we're playing each other. But I didn't draft a lot of Devontae not because I don't like him. Part of it was the schedule, seeing that they get the Bears in those 2 weeks. But the other thing too was just the price too. Like, Aaron Jones was a 3rd round pick. And I had so many shares of guys like Chris Carson and stuff like that I did want to take a couple of him. But with Devontae, seeing that schedule, seeing how good his numbers were last year. And like I said, like I really don't chase last year's numbers. Like, if a guy is consistently good, I'll take him. Like Julio Jones. Well, I don't know if Julio's even the best example, because he had that one year where he just couldn't get in the end zone. Really, my guy that I will consistently take and feel good about is DeAndre Hopkins, and it used to be Antonio Brown too prior to him leaving the Steelers. So those guys, I always felt really good about. Like I felt like I wasn't chasing last year's numbers; I was chasing 5 years worth of numbers or something like that. And so there's more consistency there.
Yeah.
But Devontae, things just lined up for him last year where there was really not a good second option in Green Bay. And so he was, I think he had like 13 touchdowns and, of course, tons of yards and receptions and stuff. And so not only you had the schedule, but I was worried about, a guy like MVS or Allison or both, like emerging a little bit more this year. There was, more talk of Matt LaFleur wanting to run the ball more to take some of the pressure off Rodgers. And if their defense is better, then, that's going to lend itself to, not throwing as much and kind of trying to control the game. So I would not have wanted to pay first round price for Devontae. And actually in our league, I didn't pay first round price. I had
I remember he fell far.
He fell into the second round. So actually the only reason I took him in our league was because I got him as a second round pick. So so that was a rare thing to have. There's probably not a lot of teams that have DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae on the same team, because you normally have to use a first round pick on him. But at that point, like, I felt like he was a good enough, value there.
I still think, I thought for most of the drafting season that this is the year to go light on wide receiver. There are just so many serviceable wide receivers at the second half of the draft this year, when people are drafting, that it's like go heavy. And AJ will say, AJ couldn't be here today, but he would say, like, well, don't invest too heavily in running backs because they get hurt so often. But I use the same argument to say, like, they get hurt so often. Take as many of the best ones as possible.
Yeah.
Go out and get their running their handcuffs on the waiver wire. But man, this year I feel so good about my teams at this point with all this stuff going on about wide receivers. You don't hear any drama about Godwin or Ridley or a lot of these guys that I picked up. What's his name for the Bears? Robinson.
Allen Robinson. Yeah.
Allen Robinson.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely understand your strategy there. Like I said, I still, my favorite strategy was to take, generally what I did in drafts our league being one of the rare exceptions, generally my strategy was to take a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. And then, but out of my first 5 rounds, it was either like 4 running backs and a wide receiver, or 3 running backs, a wide receiver, and a tight end. Because I do agree with what you're saying on like getting multiple running backs, and really like by the time you get through at least the 6th, if not the 5th. And for me, it was really more the 5th, because I didn't really want like some of those 6th round guys like Tevin Coleman, Phillip Lindsay, or Kenyon Drake, because I don't know what they're going to get this year. For me, like I wanted to have 3 running backs by the end of the 5th round.
Yeah.
And because then that way you're a little bit guarded against injuries, and you can get their handcuffs later. And, but I did like still taking either a tight end, Kelsey. Sometimes I would take Kelsey in the 2nd round, or I would take a wide receiver in, the 1st or 2nd. So I ended up with a fair amount of, Odell Beckham, which now worries me a little because of his hip issue, but I felt pretty good about because I like to be able to get like a cornerstone at wide receiver and a cornerstone at running back, and preferably at tight end too. And so then I always expect I'll be able to find, a good running back off the waiver wire. I'll be able to find a good receiver off the waiver wire. And so I don't like to go too heavy at one spot, because then you may pick up a good guy off at that same position off the wire, and then you've got nowhere to play him unless you can trade him, So I like to keep it a little more balanced.
Well, and I appreciate that. And the places where I did that, and I took the only wide receiver I was wanting to take is your man
DeAndre.
Yeah,
Juju.
DeAndre. Oh. Yeah. Oh, I did take Juju and DeAndre. Although I do feel still a little weird about Juju. DeAndre, I feel solid about. Any place I took him, and then took 4 running backs, consecutively after that.
Yeah,
I've got a great team.
Yeah,
and so, but can't draft anymore. So going forward, actually, I wanted to ask you real quick before we go, because we're way over time. But
a lot of AB talk.
If you guys have any questions, so in the chat we have a question about Darren Waller. I think the consensus for us was Darren Waller's an unknown commodity. He's been in the league for a little while. He apparently so the scoop on Darren Waller is that he had a drug problem.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about it's a kind of a beautiful story about how he overcame his drug addiction and is now clean and ready to play, and apparently playing really well. So Darren Waller might be the play here.
Yeah.
Your quick thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the size of your league. If you're in a 12-team league or bigger, I think Waller is a good option. 10-team league, it's really kind of tough for me to I guess recommend putting him in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Because you've got the big 3 tight ends of Kelsey, Kittle, and Ertz, and then you've got 2 guys that I feel really good about the added volume that they're going to get this year in Evan Ingram and OJ Howard. So immediately, 5 guys that for sure you're not going to have a. I think.
Would you pick him up off the waiver wire?
If you don't,
I've got the option now. I can pick him up and drop Montgomery. What's his name? Montgomery from the Jets.
So, Ty Montgomery.
Montgomery.
I was going to be like, no, don't drop him for David Montgomery.
Ty Montgomery. Would you drop Ty Montgomery for Waller?
If I assume you have Montgomery, but do you have Montgomery because you have Le'Veon Bell? No. Okay. I
don't have Bell anywhere. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's another guy I only have one share of, and it's in a $50 league. So I didn't take many shares of him. That's a tough one because it depends on who you have at tight end. Like if you've got a weak,
we got Kittle.
I would honestly maybe try to find somebody else other than either of those 2, because Montgomery's useless unless Le'Veon Bell gets hurt.
I don't think so, by the way.
You don't? No. They paid Le'Veon Bell to be a 3-down back. He is useless unless Le'Veon Bell gets hurt or suspended.
I really think that they're going to share more than you think.
No,
At the beginning of the season, I think they're going to share.
no. I'm 100%. We'll see. But I don't think that's going to happen at all. Like
But I mean, don't you think there is a percentage like that it could happen? Like the fact
one,
that you can get them off the waiver wire. You know, I'm not saying like go out there and trade David Montgomery for him. I'm just saying like,
yeah.
you know, like pick him up
Well,
the waiver wire, see what happens.
I mean, I think there's a ton of backs that are worth having as handcuffs. I think that's or not as, you know, if you don't have him, he's not, you know, technically a handcuff for you, but having the back in case the starter goes down.
Well, but I could see them both being on the field at the same time.
He's not going to get.
Remember, he's a wide receiver.
Sort of.
He started as a wide receiver.
But look at their receivers. It's, you know, Robbie Anderson. They signed the guy from the Redskins, Jameson.
Yeah.
They've still got. I think they've still got Enunwa. They're tied.
No, I don't think they have an Enunwa anymore.
Maybe they don't. You know, they've got Herndon, their tight end. I think he's suspended temporarily.
Yeah,
but then
for 4 weeks.
4 weeks. I just don't. I don't think Montgomery has any roster value except for either as a handcuff or you know, keeping him as a you know, in case Bell gets hurt.
Well, Bell will probably get hurt, so
yeah. But back to what was I've lost my train of thought now.
Sorry. I totally derailed you. Waller.
Yeah, back to Waller. So there's 5 guys I think, you know, that are going to can have great seasons at tight end. Then you got Hunter Henry, who I think he'll be really solid for San Diego. I think then after that it starts getting a little like sketchier. So you know, maybe Jared Cook. Some people think Vance McDonald is going to have a better season in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's really going to particularly have that much of a better season. And then like there's some guys like Austin Hooper for the Falcons, Mark Andrews for the Ravens. So I think Waller could, you know, potentially be in, you know, have a chance of getting up inside the top 10. If you've got a weak tight end, I think it's worth probably rostering him. But if not, like it's really just hard to justify rostering 2 tight ends on a 15-man, you know, fantasy football roster. I mean, normally you're stocking wide receiver and running back positions.
Yeah, it's true, but there's so many flexes, so many leagues with that extra flex. It like playing nowadays with the air raid and tight ends getting so many passes.
Mm-hmm.
It could be sort of an interesting play to flex, you know, a tight end and play a tight end if you got somebody like Waller. But nah.
I don't think. I think the only way you can justify it is if, you know, say like you grabbed, you know, Kelsey or Kittle or Ertz, and then 7th round or 8th round, like a guy like Ingram was still hanging out there, and you're like, oh man, you know, the values, the value is just too much to pass up, because I think Ingram could potentially have a better year than Ertz, because Ertz now has to go back to sharing. Like he was just the guy last year. So he had 1,000 yards. He had, you know, more touchdowns than he had before. And if you go back before that, he was like an 800 and something catch or 800 and something yard guy, you know, and like 4 touchdowns one season, 8 another. So he, you know, he wasn't putting up those crazy eye popping numbers. So I think if you've got like
they got Goddard coming up too.
They got Goddard coming up too. They added Deshaun Jackson. You know, Alshon Jeffrey is temporarily healthier than he was last year. They really like that receiver, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. He gets some buzz. I had one share of Ertz, and I can't remember if I still have it or if I traded it. I think I traded it because I just don't. I think he's for the same reason that I was like grabbing a ton of Chris Carson because I thought he was lower than he should be. I was avoiding Zach Ertz because I thought he was higher than he should be. So that's the only way that I would play 2 tight ends is if you've got like a Kelsey and you got Ingram late or something, you know?
Yeah. Okay, well that wraps it up for the Rotor Hackers. We missed having AJ today. Do you have any final? So for the final word, do you have anything to get off your chest? Something that's been nagging you? Are you aggravated with my messy background here? What is there anything that you wanted to say before we sign out?
Not really. I just I go back to like all of the Antonio Brown drama that we've had within 2 days. And I am just curious to see, like, since he's not on a roster anymore, maybe it calms down a little bit, but I maybe not. I mean, again, he doesn't need to be, he hasn't been showing up half the time with the Raiders, and all the drama that he's been creating has been, a lot of times related to not showing up or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. So I'm happy and eager for the season to start Sunday, really start Sunday, because we got a Thursday night game,
It was
but
the tease.
it was the
tease.
yeah.
And it wasn't that good of a tease either.
It was like the cold open. It's like the cold open to a TV show, and so I'm just eager for that to get going, eager to see what my fantasy guys do. I'm sure after week 1 it'll be like usual, where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a terrible season. Why did I draft these guys? And then hopefully it'll get better from there. So.
Well, good luck out there. Any final thought? Oh, Julio just signed.
He did. Yeah, I saw that was actually something I forgot to mention.
67 or something.
I didn't see the numbers, but it was going to make him like the highest paid.
66 million guaranteed deal with 64 million due at signing. That's a lot of dough.
How much? Like 67 guaranteed?
66 million guaranteed, 3-year deal.
Antonio Brown is having a worse day now because he just went from 30 million guaranteed to 0 guaranteed, and Julio Jones went from whatever was guaranteed before, which not that much because he was near the end of his deal, to 60, 6-7 million guaranteed. Like, Antonio Brown, he's going to make a video just about that. He's going to make a video about how he's better than Julio Jones. And I'm only partially joking. He might literally do it.
It would actually be a good play. He should become a YouTuber is what he needs to do. But the Brown thing, I think Julio needs to do a video thanking Antonio Brown is what he needs to do, because those managers are panicking like, oh, no, just get what he wants. We don't want to go through that,
Well, that's the great thing about Julio is there's a lot of diva receivers out there. I mean, we have gone through in the past, the Terrell Owens. Randy Moss wasn't really a diva as much as just kind of a weird dude. But Terrell Owens, Chad Johnson, there's a long, endless list. And I mean, even now, Tyreek Hill, we weren't sure if Tyreek Hill was going to be on an NFL roster coming into the season for maybe breaking his kid's arm. Yeah. Antonio Brown, all the crazy stuff that he has going on. So when you have a guy like Julio or, DeAndre Hopkins or something like that, who's, just an elite receiver, but is also not a diva, it's just like, man, it makes such a difference. I mean, even Odell Beckham, he wore out his welcome in New York, not because he's a bad guy necessarily, but they're just like, we don't want to deal with the drama. So Julio, I like Julio. I think Julio, he's earned his money. So I'm glad for him.
All right. Well, I am excited to see you out there on the, what would you say? Like the virtual field of fantasy football.
The fantasy gridiron.
Yeah. Mind to mind, prediction to prediction. We'll see what happens. And remember to be zen. And also that in the NFL, most analysis is usually there's so much NFL and change and stuff that most predictions are going to be right and wrong in the same season. All right. I will taco to you later. taco. Should I use that from now on, or